If you've been with us, you know we've been journeying through Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus. We're in this last extended little part here where Paul tells his readers to put on the armor of God, and we've decided to take that piece by piece just to give a little more emphasis to his kind of big closing that's happening here in this letter. We'll be wrapping up this teaching series the end of this month and then launching into a series for the rest of the summer in the book of the Psalms. Just looking at various Psalms and what they teach us about God and how we respond to that together. So, this morning we are talking about the shield of faith. Paul says, take up the shield of faith. So if you copy the scriptures, you can turn to Ephesians chapter 6. We're going to start reading at verse 13, and our verse is verse 16. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you've done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Word of God for the people of God. Okay, so we've been looking at this, right? It started with the idea of putting on the belt of truth, of course, a central and initial thing that needs to happen. We gird ourselves up with that. Truth is the basis of all else. Then righteousness, our standing with God through Christ, gives us true identity. We remember the CARES acronym from Ephesians chapter 1, chosen, adopted, redeemed, enlightened, designated as an heir. I missed one, didn't I? Chosen, adopted, redeemed, enlightened, designated, and sealed. Thank you. That's at the end. Sealed with the Holy Spirit. That's our righteousness. That's who we are. That's our standing that allows us to to defend ourselves against the attacks of the enemy. And then 2 weeks ago, this idea of strapping on our gospel sandals so that we have the right footing to resist the moves of the enemy against us. Now Paul says, in addition to those core things, let's talk about some other really important things. And this morning it is the shield of faith. So, in the very same way that we've done throughout this series, I'm just going to try to answer 3 broad questions for you this morning. That is, what is faith? What does he mean when he says faith? It's actually a more complicated answer than you might think. The second is, how does faith protect us? And then the third is, how do we take it up? How do we put it on? What are some practical ways that we can lean into that reality as Paul has asked us to do it? So, faith. When we think of faith, and oftentimes when we read much of the Bible, we as Western, Cartesian, Enlightenment, it's getting all philosophical with you people, we are obsessed with our brains, right, in this world. Everything is about what we think. We think, therefore we are, right? That's René Descartes. That's the Cartesian reality of it. But so when we come to a word like faith, we process it almost always intellectually. He has a faith, right? Or my faith, the set of things that I believe to be true. How I'm processing those things. That's faith, and that's a good start. But when the Bible talks about faith in the first century world of Jesus and Paul, it's talking about a much more holistic concept that is inclusive of all aspects of our being, body, soul, and spirit, and body including mind, right? And spirit probably referring to our heart, our will moving forward. So for faith to truly be present in us, it is a mental reality that so rests in our soul that it is a trusting reality that informs our heart to act. It is a willed activity. So we could use this definition of faith in a biblical way. That is that faith is belief or trust, probably an even better word, that activates. So it is not really fully formed faith until it is something we are responding to, not just thinking about. Does it make sense? That we have so come to trust something that we are stepping into it. Now, I do not say that to demean the beginnings of faith in any way. All of us will find out, especially in challenging seasons of life, we have less faith than we might have expected. Why? Because much of what we have done is wrestle with things in our brain and not actually enacted them into our life through our inner man, through our soul, like Paul is talking about here. Now, Paul has faced all kinds of hardship and circumstances in his life. He's got a fully fleshed out definition of faith in a very particular way. But let me give you just a couple of real-life illustrations of what faith looks like in a kind of comical way. So faith is what you're all doing right now. You've heard me give this illustration all the time. You've chosen to sit in these chairs, right? That wasn't just an act of your brain. Your whole body responded to that, and you sat down in it. Why? Because at some level, you trusted that it would hold you and support you. You've been here long enough to not trust that it would be comfortable, but it will hold you and support you. And so you are sitting in it. That is faith. All of you got here today in a car, I'm imagining. That was an act of faith, right? Faith in whoever it was that drove you, little or deep as faith might be, depending upon how much you prefer that person's driving, or faith in yourself as the driver, right? It was not just an intellectual thought that said, I could do this. You actually got in the car, turned on the ignition, and you came. That's faith in a biblical sense of the way. Or think about it like a little kid, like a toddler who comes running off the edge of their bed and leaps into their parents' arms. That's faith, right? Why? Because they have trusted to the point of activation that mom or dad or whoever it is going to catch them and love them and protect them. So when Paul talks about faith, he's talking about it in this holistic way. Absolutely, in many ways, it begins in our brain. I don't mean to demean that in any way, but it has to be moved into our inner person in a form of trust. That is what enables our heart to actually will. Remember, in the biblical sense, the heart is the control center of the person, right? It's the will. It's not just the ooey gooey emotional center. For the Greeks, that was the guts, right? And so that's when we can actually begin to choose. When we actually are trusting, we can actually begin to choose to activate ourselves into faith. So it should be no surprise to us then that the Greek word for faith is the word pistis, and it can be translated two ways, faith or faithfulness. That shouldn't surprise us because faith, in their sense, they wouldn't have cared how we translated it because it means the same thing. In our modern English sense, faith is the idea of something. Faithfulness is when it has actually happened, right? And for the first century world, those are the same thing. So pistis is faith, but it's also faithfulness that is faith demonstrated, right? And so this is what's happening. So I say all of this not just to give us a bigger sense of the word, but I hope to open our minds to the reality that our lives are loaded with faith commitments. So many people talk about not being a person of faith. False. Everyone is a person of immense faith in all kinds of different things. In fact, there's nothing that you do that doesn't have a component of faith in it. And so faith is huge. So that begs the question then, faith in what? Because Paul is not just talking generically about faith here. Faith in what? What is he asking us to have faith in? And while this might be a simple and obvious answer, it's really significant. It's faith in God, right? Faith in God. After all, this whole letter of Ephesians written to this church is telling these people and reminding them what God has done for them, who he is, what he has done, and therefore who they are, right? Why do we talk about that here at Hope? Because it's littered throughout the whole New Testament. And conjuring that up is about faith in God that moves us to action on the basis of our trust in him. We could probably say it this way. That is that Paul is asking us to have faith in God's faithfulness. That is, God has already demonstrated himself to us. That we can have faith in that. Maybe he was even thinking about the Psalms, perhaps a psalm like this, Psalm 91. That says in verse 3, Surely he, that is God, will save you from the fowler's snare. What's a fowler, right? It's an archer. So we're talking about this stuff here too. And from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Listen, his faithfulness will be your shield. So think about this with me now. Faith, in essence, is the act of taking up the shield, but the shield itself is what you're having faith in. And the shield is God. Yes? And Paul is inviting us with regularity to take up the faithfulness of God for us. We can think about faithfulness of God kind of in this way. Hopefully this is helpful in two parts. We'll talk about the person of God and the plan of God. That is, who is God and what has he done, right? Therefore, who we are. The person of God and the plan of God. So, the Bible is littered with truth about who God is, and many of us can rattle off all kinds of statements about who God is. That's amazing. We should know these statements. Statements about his character, statements about his attributes, the reality of who he actually is. It's important to know that because this world in our flesh wants to create caricatures of God that aren't true and are misleading to us. So think about who God is with me in just a broad sense. Man, we don't have time to talk about any of this in depth. God is love. That's who he is. That's core to who he is. God doesn't feel love. He is love. And all love in this world emanates from him. God is sovereign. That means nothing happens outside of God's either activation of it or allowance of it. And however you want to piece that together in your own personal systematic theology, we're cool with here at Hope. But that's who he is. You can't deny that. You cannot be a Christian and deny the sovereignty of God. He's in control of all things. God is omnipotent, means he's all-powerful. He can do anything. He's omniscient. He knows everything. He's immutable, means he doesn't change. That's how he can be faithful. God is not fickle like all the gods of this world. He's not capricious. He doesn't change his disposition towards us. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God has a aseity. That means he exists on his own. He's not dependent upon anyone else. This deep and profound theology of God is so significant because when we know it, we trust him. And when we trust him, it moves us to action. Now, here's the question for us, all of us, me included. That is, when we think about those statements of God, are they merely just intellectual truths that we have agreed to? Or are we so knowing God that we are embracing them in our soul, in our inner man, trusting that they are true? Rach and I, over the last couple of months, had to make huge, I won't call them decisions, but agreements with two of our boys. We only have two boys, so both of our boys, who wanted to do huge trips on their own. Good grief. They're old enough and capable enough, but the first time as a parent they ask you to do something like that, that's a whole new ball game, right? Got one that wants to travel to South America to present a paper at a conference, and the other wants to spend a summer doing an internship in Colorado. So Jack is back from Rio. Went fantastic. Ty's working with wildlife in Sedalia, Colorado right now. They both got their yes, but Rachel and I had to do a whole lot of work, not just agreeing with truths about God, but re-embracing them in our soul. God, you are sovereign. God, you are omnipotent, omniscient, all of these things. And doing that work allowed us to hear from God that, yes, these are good things for your boys in this season. They're right. And it enabled us to be able to say, trepidatiously, because we're human, yes. I don't like to give positive examples of myself because I don't want to ever put myself on a pedestal. But you get the point, right? That this is what faith looks like, and faith, it gets worked out like that. It often doesn't just, boop, show up and you happen. Every once in a while, the Holy Spirit will zap you in that way because he knows the process maybe is a little too long or something. But this is what we're talking about. And so when Paul writes about this faith in God, that's what he's saying. It's great. It's a good start to know those facts about God, but what are we doing to incorporate them into our knowing of him in the depths of our being that enables us to trust and then to begin to step, even sometimes into scary things, to activate them. And it might not be a sovereignty thing that you're working through now. It might be a love thing that you're working through now, or an immutability thing right now, or a forgiveness kind of thing right now. But all of those things are faith components. And Paul says, do the work. Do the work of not just saying, okay, yeah, it's in the Bible, so I guess I agree with it, but of driving it into your soul in a trusting posture that allows you to activate yourself. But it's not just the person of God, it's the plan of God. It is what he's doing in this world, right? He's the creator of this world. He's the sustainer of this world, and he has enacted through his covenant program the redemption of this world. We live in the already not yet experience of it, which makes it exciting and scary all at the same time. Yeah? It makes it pleasant and torturous all at the same time. And without faith, we cannot navigate the complexities of this life or this world. And so the question then becomes, is the plan of God just a biblical story that you agree with because it's in the Bible? Or is it a story that is coming to define your story because you're embracing it in your soul, in your inner, you're trusting your story and your family story to God's bigger story? That's what releases us to begin to activate our lives and orient them in faith. Does it make sense? Paul says the shield of faith. Take up faith. Faith in what? Faith in the faithfulness of God. Now here's the truth, friends. All of you right now, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, have a vast armory at home, right? That is that you are a personal collector of countless numbers of shields. Most of them are intangible. I get it, right? Some of you, maybe you actually do have shields at home. That's kind of cool. What are you trusting in this life? What are you saying? I'm trusting this to get me through. I mean, and this, listen, there's seasons of this life that are great. There's seasons of this life that are super hard, and there's that whole muddy middle, right? We all realize we need something outside of ourselves to navigate this life. Those are our shields. They are going to protect us. They're going to get us through. What is that you're trusting in? What is that you're ultimately trusting in? Or an even better question is, what moves you to action in this life? What actually moves you to action in this life? Those are your shields. Listen, I'm not here to condemn every shield. I'm here to tell you that every shield apart from God will fail you. It might give you success in certain aspects of life. It might defend certain things, but it is not a foolproof shield. We have earthly shields like vocations and bank accounts and wealth. We have earthly shields like politics. I know I bring this up all so often, but it's the world we live in right now, isn't it? Everyone is trusting in their freaking political parties right now. What if the church trusted in God? Engaged in politics, sure, but what if your actual trust and activation was in God, not in those things? Yeah, I'm not here to tell you politics is evil and wrong and whatever. It can be useful and helpful in things, but it's not going to get you where you think it is. In the same way, a bank account or a vocation or a pursuit of an American dream or whatever it is, they all fall short. In the same way, we have spiritual shields that will fail us, don't we? I mean, let's just be honest. Denominations, certain theological systems and structures. Churches, pastors. If I am your ultimate shield, oh my goodness, you are in danger, friends. I can't even shield myself, good grief, right? But we do, I don't know why, but we do that. We look at things, well, he knows God, and then we get let down by these people. Or, we live in a world of like celebrity spirituality too. Well, this author, in so much as that author points you to God, who is the ultimate shield, praise God. In so much as you're using that person, that is a wrong use of what God has called them to do, right? And so we just have to be careful. There are lots of good things that we can lean on and rely and use as trellises to grow as followers of Jesus, but they cannot be our ultimate shield lest we find ourselves in all kinds of peril. Yeah? So Paul says, make sure that God is your ultimate shield. We have faith in the faithfulness of God. So how does this protect us? How does this shield of faith protect us? Well, pause and remind ourselves again, because it is easy to remember, protect from what, right? It is not protect from, challenges or difficulties. It is not protect from other human beings, struggle as we may relationally with them, or in viewpoint or perspective in life with them. Paul says our fight is against powers and the principalities, right? The forces of the heavenly places. And very clearly in verse 16, he reminds us it's the evil one who's shooting these fiery arrows. Like, he doesn't pull any punches. This is Satan and his minions working. And we've paused and talked about this. I don't know a better place to go than John chapter 10, verse 10. Remember what Paul says, Jesus teaching there says that it's the thief or the evil one, the enemy, that is Satan, who comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? That is his M.O. What is Jesus' M.O.? To give us life and life to the fullest. When we walk with Jesus, we're walking into life and full life. What is the enemy trying to do? Steal, kill, and destroy the full life that Jesus is building with us. The masterpiece that God is building within you, your family, and collectively the church to the ends of the age. He wants to demolish that in any way that he can. Paul talks about faith as a shield. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, there are all kinds of shields out there, right? There's those small circular shields that I think, who on earth wants to carry that thing? Because unless you're super good with it, you're in trouble, Like, I'm 6'2", I don't need a small little shield. I need something that is human size, right? But in the first century world of Paul, most people think that Paul is perhaps even sitting right in prison, right next to a Roman soldier. He's imagining a Roman soldier, and the Romans in that time used a shield that was called a scutum. Ever heard of this before? Here's a real-life scutum that was probably from around 250 A.D., so later than Paul, but it gives you the picture. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a shield, right? 4 feet high, 2.5 feet wide, cylindrically shaped so it fits your body, made of strong wood, metal on the edges and around it, extra metal in the middle to protect against spears and swords. The depth of it was about the width of someone's palm. I mean, this is heavy-duty stuff. And what was this shield meant to do? Well, first and foremost, it was meant to block stuff, right? But then also, it was meant to extinguish things. So Paul specifically talks about that, doesn't he? He says, extinguish the fiery arrows of the enemy. Well, you don't need to extinguish anything if you don't block it, right? First and foremost, you've got to block it. And this thing, you're crouched down, whatever, it's got you pretty well covered, and it's strong enough to block everything. But in those days, oftentimes archers would take their missiles or their arrows, they would dip them in pitch, they would ignite them, and they would shoot them off. Why? to exact as much destruction as they possibly could. If they hit a person with it, great. But if they hit other things with it, it could ignite things and spread fire and destroy things, including wooden shields, right? So you know what they did with these scutums? They wrapped the whole front in leather, which extinguished fiery arrows upon hitting. Amazing, isn't it? And so Paul probably has this exact defense in mind. That is, hey, fair enough to just block things, but you better understand the enemy you're fighting against. He's lighting his arrows on fire. He's trying to not just get a kill shot, but to wreak havoc and destruction wherever and however he can. So what are the arrows of the evil one? Well, they can be anything and everything we've already talked about. We've talked about in this series, accusation. The devil is the accuser of the brethren. He wants to tell us every which way we've screwed up. Temptation, we've talked about that already. He's the one who tries to lead us astray from faithfulness, from the way of God. These are very clear arrows. Can I suggest two more for you this morning? First is he's a liar. It's the arrow of untruth, right? And it's pretty hard to say untruth because he's a crafty little liar. He weaves a whole lot of truth in there to catch us with the untruth. And another one is trials and tribulations. Now listen, the whole New Testament is replete with regular reality that there's struggle in this world. Even Jesus in the Gospel of John tells his disciples, in this world you will have trouble, but take hope, I have overcome the world. Maybe he could say, take hope, I'm giving you a shield, a whole nother way. James says, hey, consider it pure joy when you face all kinds of trials. Why would he say that? Because you have the opportunity to lean on the faithfulness of God and to grow, therefore, in faith. He talks about perseverance and growing in faith because of all of those things. Let me say a couple words about trials and tribulations in this life. Is God involved in them? We've already said that he's sovereign, so we cannot disassociate him from these things. Your personal theology can work this out in a couple of different ways. Here's probably an overarching truth of that, is that there are, for whatever reason, times in which God allows challenges, trials, tribulations, and difficulties to come into our existence that are not necessarily of his creation, but are moments where he permits the evil one to wreak some havoc because he sees the ultimate good that can come out of it because his faithfulness goes on display for the watching world. Think of the Old Testament book of Job, where it says that Satan comes into the heavenly places and asks permission to bring suffering upon Job. Now, it is challenging for us, and we don't have time this morning to ask, why would God allow that? We're trusting in his goodness, his love, and his plan. That's faith, right? And maybe session number 1 in heaven will be why God allows hard things to happen. Like, we'd all be up for hearing that, probably, But we'll let him teach that, not me. And this is how it is. You remember when Jesus is talking to Peter, and remember, he's so bold towards the end of Jesus' earthly life, and Jesus says to Peter, oh, Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, right? And so we know that Satan is asking and seeking opportunities to do these things, and that God at times allows it to happen in order that his faithfulness might win the day. Well, I love that song we sang, A Mighty Fortress, my favorite song, my favorite person, Martin Luther. Psalm 46, right? God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in times of struggle. But I love in that hymn, the verse that says, and he must win the battle, right? That's faith, fully enacted. And this idea that God, when he allows these things to happen, as hard and challenging as it becomes opportunity for him to win the battle. He is the shield. We are not. And our faith, though sometimes over-elevated in segments of the church, is also not the shield, right? We have segments of the church who talk about, if you just have enough faith, wrong. God's faithfulness wins the day. And when we lean on it, we are giving up, in essence, our own stability and structure to lean into his way and his plan. And so it is. So, lies, trials, accusations, temptations, any of the other games of the enemy, think of them like arrows that he shoots at us. But they are not coming in as they are. They're coming in dipped in pitch and ignited. Why? Because when they hit, he wants them to spread all kinds of things. Think about it like this. Doubt, weariness, isolation. All of the ways in which when these things hit, the thing that happens on the other side of them is actually far more destructive than the thing itself. Because it's lit with a flame that burns so much of what's around us. Paul says that the faithfulness of God extinguishes that. It keeps us from that. It doesn't just block the arrow itself, but it extinguishes the intent of the enemy in shooting it, if we would take it up. Again, incumbent upon us to take it up with regularity. So, in saying those things, let's try to answer the last question then. How can we practically take up this shield of faith? I won't say preach the gospel to yourself regularly again, because one, I just did, and two, you're tired of me saying it, but preach the gospel to yourself regularly. That's one of the ways you'll do it, right? Because what is the gospel? Who God is, what God has done, and therefore who we are, right? Drive that from your head to your heart. Tim Keller used to talk about it like putting a quarter, remember when a soda used to cost a quarter in a vending machine? Putting a quarter in a vending machine and it kind of gets stuck. You got to just keep hitting the side of the vending machine until it finally drops. That's like us, right? With the gospel. Just keep putting it in and keep smacking the side, maybe even literally, just keep smacking the side of your head till it starts dropping into your soul and into your heart that moves you into action. But let me give you two other things. Second, make it your ambition to know God, not just know about him. This is the call of the whole Bible, not even just the New Testament. That in the biblical languages, there are different words, Hebrew and Greek, there are different words for knowing about and knowing personally. And when we're called to know God, it is always to know him personally. Yada in Hebrew, right? To know him. Yada, such a intimate word that is often also used of sexual relationships between a husband and a wife. You know, like to know God with that kind of intimacy and power, to pursue him. I think Jesus, this is what he knew when he answered a question that was put before him one day. It said, what? They're always trying to catch him with hard questions, right? He said, hey, Jesus, what is the greatest of all the commandments? And of course, he went back to the Shema of Deuteronomy 6, but he summarized it this way in Matthew 22. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. There are those three things. Fascinating, isn't it? That is in the same way faith is mind, soul, and will. Loving God is also mind, soul, and will. For so many of us, because of the world we live in and the way we process and think about things, the churches that we were born into, so much of our interaction with God is just in our brains. But what are we doing to learn to love God with our soul and to love God with our heart, our will, our directions? Jesus says in John 15, abide in me, and then he breaks it down. Abide in my words, brain, and abide in my love, soul and heart. What practices are you incorporating in your daily rhythms that are engaging your inner person and not just your brain in who God is, what God has done and is doing, and therefore who you are? Cultivate love for God in every part of your being. Know him, heart, soul, and mind. And then, a very practical way that you take up the shield of faith, live in and value community. This whole book of Ephesians has been telling us all along, oh, you shouldn't do this by yourself. In fact, the whole thing God is doing is making you one. Now, that shield was pretty stinking impressive, wasn't it? But you know what the Romans would do? They would gather whole units together, and they would go into tortoise formation. It's called testudo in Latin. And this is what it looks like. Now, you tell me what arrow's getting in there. Yeah? This was wildly successful military formation. And this is only possible in community. That is, you can, in fact, take up the faithfulness of God by leaning on your brother and sister who are helping hold it up for you. God meant it to be that way. Remember when Moses is told to hold his hands up so the Israelites can win the war, but he can't, so Aaron and Miriam hold them up for him? Like, this is the picture of faith in the faithfulness of God is communal. You are not exposed in the testudo formation. Are you part of a community group, friend? I mean, not just part of it, but like part of it. Are you leaning into it? Are you getting a little vulnerable with the people around you? It is hard for them to get into that posture with you if they are unaware of the attacks that are coming your way. God has given us community as a profound gift and the chief way that we experience his blessings in this already not yet world. God works through his people on our behalf. Take up the shield of faith. Preach the gospel regularly to yourself. Know God, heart, soul, and mind. Engage in community, not just to check religious boxes, but to get into tortoise formation for your good, and remember, for the good of everyone in the community with you. Anyone lets their shield down there, and all of a sudden, everyone is exposed. What a profound picture Paul has painted for his hearers. Every one of them knew exactly what he was talking about in ways we need to see pictures to figure out because we live so far away from that time. Faith is belief that leads to trust, that leads to action. Paul says, have that kind of faith in the faithfulness of God and take it up with regularity. Right? Shield doesn't come up on its own. It's a gift given to you. And when you use it, it is for your own good. Pray with me. God, thank you for your faithfulness. You have demonstrated in utter perfection who you are and what you are doing. There is no shadow of turning with you. Help us to increasingly be people who are not just cognizant of you in our brains, but in our souls and in our hearts. Help us moment by moment. We're imperfect, that's okay. Moment by moment to build trust and to take action. Help us to know you in profound ways. Thank you, God, that you are not only the creator of the universe, but you have offered yourself to us as our shield. Stunning. Amazing. It gives me great joy. Let us not take up other shields. Ask it in your name. Amen.